Okay, let's start with a feeling, something I'm almost certain every single person listening has felt.
You know the one I'm talking about. You walk into a room, maybe you're a little late, and suddenly, boom! It's like a switch flips and every single person turns to look right at you.
And in that split second, your brain just goes into overdrive, right? You're convinced they're judging your shirt, your hair, the way you're walking, every little thing.
Well, here's the truth, and it's a really good one. Almost nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. This isn't just some nice little phrase to make you feel better. It's a real psychological fact. And once you get it, it's total freedom. Let me tell you a story that perfectly explains this.
All right, so let me introduce you to Arjun. His story is a perfect example of how our brains can take one tiny little blip and turn it into an absolute personal disaster.
So, Arjun's this super smart, ambitious software engineer, 25 years old. He's got this massive presentation coming up. We're talking weeks of prep. He knows his stuff inside and out. For him, the stakes are sky high.
He gets up there, opens his mouth to start, and his voice cracks. Just for a second. That's it. A tiny little squeak. But to him, oh man, in his mind, it felt like a bomb just went off in the room. And this is where it gets wild. That one single second sent him into a 72-hour anxiety spiral. In the moment, he was totally convinced that all 30 people in that room were just burning holes into him with their eyes. He couldn't sleep that night, just replaying it over and over. For the next 3 days, he's ducking and diving, avoiding eye contact with his colleagues. He actually, seriously, thought about quitting his job. All of this from a 1-second voice crack. But then came the feedback from the presentation. Guess how many people mentioned the voice crack? 0. Nada. Not a single person wrote it down. The catastrophe that was living rent-free in Arjun's head for 3 solid days, it literally didn't even exist for anyone else. And get this, not only did they not notice his huge mistake, but 3 people actually said it was the best presentation of the entire day. The difference between what he felt and what was real was just massive. And what Arjun went through, well, it has a name, and there's some really cool science behind it. Which brings us to one of my favorite psychological experiments ever. Seriously, it's the perfect proof for this whole thing, and it involves something we've all felt, worrying about what we're wearing. Okay, so what we're talking about here is called the spotlight effect. It was first studied by researchers Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky, and their definition is simple. We tend to believe we're being noticed way more than we actually are. It's like you're walking around with a giant imaginary spotlight pointed right at you. So how do you even prove something like that? Well, they came up with this brilliant study back in 1999 that involved a very, very embarrassing t-shirt. Okay, check this out. They had a student walk into a classroom full of their peers wearing this glorious Barry Manilow t-shirt. Not exactly the height of cool for a college kid. They asked the student wearing the shirt, hey, what percentage of the room do you think noticed your shirt? And on average, they guessed around 50%, half the room. But the reality? It was only about 25%. They overestimated how much people noticed them by double. That's huge. So why on earth do our brains do this to us? It basically boils down to one simple but totally wrong assumption that we all make. It's this idea that if this feels gigantic to me, then it must feel gigantic to everyone else. Psychologists call this an egocentric bias. And it makes sense, right? You are the absolute center of your own universe. You live every single second of your life from your own perspective. So of course your brain thinks your experience is the main event. So how does this actually work in our brains? Well, there's this mental shortcut called the anchoring and adjustment heuristic. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. First, your brain anchors itself to your own intense feeling. Like for Arjun, that voice crack was a 10 out of 10 disaster. Then it tries to adjust to guess what other people are thinking. Maybe he thought, okay, maybe for them it's only an 8. But that anchor is so powerful, the adjustment is never enough. He could never get to the reality, which was that for everyone else, it was a big fat 0. Now, you might be thinking, is this just main character syndrome? And it's a good question, but they're a little different. The spotlight effect is really driven by anxiety, this fear that people are judging your flaws. Main character syndrome, on the other hand, is more about self-focus, believing the world revolves around you. They're related, for sure, but the feeling behind them is different. Okay, so what's the takeaway here? What do we do with all this? This is the best part.
This isn't supposed to be depressing news. It's the exact opposite. It's like a get-out-of-jail-free card for your brain.
Because here's the secret. Everybody else is too busy worrying about the spotlight on them to notice the one on you. Just picture it. You walk into a room, and every single person in there has their own little spotlight shining down, highlighting their own weird shirt or the dumb thing they just said. They are the stars of their own movie. They don't have time to be an extra in yours. There's this great quote from a writer named Olin Miller that just nails it. He said, "You probably wouldn't worry about what people think of you if you could know how seldom they do." So much of that pressure we feel is just made up. It's a story we're telling ourselves. And when you really, truly get that, man, it's not sad, it's freedom. It means you can go ahead and wear that weird outfit. You can ask that stupid question in the meeting. You can be yourself. Because that huge audience you're so terrified of, they're mostly just looking at their phones or thinking about what's for lunch. So I'll just leave you with this one question. If you really knew, deep down, that no one was really watching, what would you do differently tomorrow?